What if today your healing didn't depend on how strong you felt, but on the God who holds strength when yours runs dry? In the quiet stillness of this morning, before the world demands your answers and your fears begin their rehearsals, there's a wound still pulsing beneath the surface. You've cried out, you've waited, hoping with trembling hands, yet it's still hurt, not in ways others can see, but in how your faith flinches when hope knocks again. It's the subtle ache of being almost healed, but not yet. Like a fracture that mended wrong, it twinges when the winds of doubt blow in. And just when you think you should be past this, you're reminded that healing doesn't follow our clocks. But hear this sacred truth. God is not tapping his foot in impatience. He is not hurried. He kneels beside you in the dust, near the ache. Psalm 91 doesn't promise instant relief. It promises presence. Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. Dwelling isn't a weekend visit. It's where your spirit breathes, where pain meets mercy, and where brokenness finds a home without shame. There are mornings like this when the soul feels like a glass that cracked long ago, repaired, yes, but never quite untouched. The ache that lingers is not a sign of failure. It's a place where God's presence is quietly at work. Isaiah 53:5 tells us, "By his wounds we are healed, not by our efforts, not by our ability to move on. His wounds, his mercy, his pace." You are not failing because you still feel pain. You are being held. God is not in a hurry because what he builds to last. Lisa Bevere reminds us of this truth, and it's echoed in every soul that has waited in quiet surrender. Healing is not fragile. It is forged in the sacred spaces between your most honest prayers. It's not always loud. Often, it is like roots deepening unseen beneath the winter's soil, drawing strength where the eye cannot see. Even if you still feel broken, you are not forgotten. You are not a problem to be fixed, but a soul being mended under the patient hand of heaven. You may not feel progress today, but something holy is unfolding. There is a reweaving of soul threads torn by yesterday, a recalibration of your spiritual center happening in the stillness. God doesn't rush transformation because he sees the full picture, eternity written into the process. Psalm 23:3 reminds us, "He restores my soul." Restoration isn't just about removing pain. It's about rebuilding the places where joy, trust, and peace once lived. This morning, breathe deeply, not because the pain has passed, but because the healer is close. This is not the end of your story. It's the sacred pause where heaven reworks what hell tried to tear apart. This moment is not a verdict, it's a visitation. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are being held in the same hands that bear the marks of your redemption. As Pope Leo XIV once said, "The soul mends best under the patient hand of heaven," and even now, that hand holds yours. What wound still aches even after you've prayed for healing? Where are you pressuring yourself to be whole before God is finished restoring? Can you trust the healer even when the healing feels slow? He restores my soul. Psalm 23:3. I will restore you to health and heal your wounds. Jeremiah 30:17. By his wounds we are healed. Isaiah 53:5. If this morning prayer steadied your breath and reminded you that God is not done with your story, share it with someone still waiting for their healing. Let today be a day you rest, not because the wound is gone, but because the healer has never left. There are mornings when it feels like nothing has changed. You open your eyes and realize the ache is still there, the same grief, the same fear, the same quiet weight pressing against your chest like a shadow that won't move. You reach for Psalm 91, and though your heart feels numb, your lips remember the promise. He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. But trust can feel like a steep climb when your emotions have gone silent. What do you do when healing doesn't announce itself with a miracle, but whispers through cracked breath and sacred routine? As Dr. Anita Phillips teaches, healing is not always a feeling. It is a becoming, a slow alignment of your soul with God's truth, even when everything inside you feels broken. You whisper a prayer not because you feel strong, but because you refuse to forget how to hope. And that quiet whisper is trust. That posture of stillness is courage. Morning prayer is not a performance. It is presence. It is you choosing once more to stay with God even when the evidence is missing and the feelings have faded. There is power in showing up to prayer not to impress God, but to meet Him honestly. This is where trust becomes holy. When you sit in the silence and still say, "Lord, I'm here," you are planting yourself like a tree by the waters. Jeremiah 17 reminds us that those who trust in the Lord do not fear when heat comes. Their leaves are always green. You may not feel the green today, but you are rooted. Even now, your roots are holding through the drought. God's healing is not measured by how good you feel, but by how faithfully you remain. You may not see the healing yet, but it is happening in layers beneath the surface, in moments of surrender, in the sacred pauses between your questions. Pope Leo XIV reminds us, the soul does not always hear heaven's answer, but it always receives it. And this is the truth you carry today. Not that healing must feel dramatic, but that it is divine, even in its quiet. You are not being overlooked. You are being rebuilt, one prayer at a time. God does not need noise to move. Sometimes healing feels like stillness because it is. Like a seed breaking open underground, your restoration is taking place in silence. Psalm 23:2-3 says, "He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul." Let that be your vision today. Not rushing rivers, but gentle streams that soften what's been hardened. You may think the silence is a delay, but what if it's an invitation? An invitation to breathe deeper, to surrender again, to let God do the quiet work that lasts. Trust isn't pretending the pain is gone. It's staying honest in the ache and still choosing to believe that God is near, and He is. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted, not just when they smile, but when they sit with tear-streaked faces and trembling hands. Your spiritual roots are not shallow. They are anchored in a promise that doesn't shift with your emotions. This is not a punishment. It is a sacred holding. The quiet is not empty. It is holy. Are you confusing the absence of feeling with the absence of healing? What does it look like for you to trust God without visible results? How can today's silence be part of your restoration? The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. Psalm 34:18. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. Psalm 23:2-3. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Proverbs 3:5. If this touched something unspoken in you, let today be the day you speak it aloud. To God, in your journal, or in a prayer shared with a friend. Healing begins when we stop pretending and start trusting. You are not behind. You are being held. Healing in God's hands is never a transaction. It is always an invitation, not to be instantly repaired, but to be tenderly restored through relationship. This morning you may find yourself in the sacred in-between, not where you were, but not yet where you long to be. The ache is quieter now, but it's still there. And in this gentle space of becoming, God is not absent. He is active, Spiritual healing is not always immediate because God doesn't rush what He loves. He isn't just patching wounds. He's reteaching your soul how to breathe without fear. Isaiah 41:10 reminds us, "Do not fear, for I am with you. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." That help may come slowly, but it always arrives not as pressure to be better, but as presence that holds you steady. The Jakes once said, "God may not always deliver you from the fire, but He will always step into it with you." So if you feel caught in the fire this morning, don't panic. You're not alone. You're not forgotten. God is not watching from a distance. He's right here, stepping into the ache with you. This is not a delay. It's a deepening, a quiet rebuilding beneath the surface. You may feel tempted to measure your healing by how fast the pain goes away, but healing is not proof of your strength. It's evidence of God's love. Even when the wound hasn't closed, your worship is being heard. Even when the tears fall silently, heaven is recording each one. Psalm 91 wasn't written for those who've already arrived. It was written for those learning to abide. When the Lord has asked us to work, He was healed Himself. He was written for those who've already arrived. It 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 was written for those who whisper, "You are my refuge," while their soul is still unraveling. That whisper, it's not weakness, it's worship. You don't need to pretend you're whole to prove your faith. Just keep returning, keep breathing, keep receiving, because healing comes not through rushing, but through resting. God isn't asking for performance. He's inviting you into presence, into a moment of stillness where your broken places are no longer shameful, but sacred. Pope Leo XIV reminds us, God's restoration does not depend on speed. It depends on surrender, and surrender is what you're offering now, even through your weariness. So breathe again, not because you feel fixed, but because the healer is near. You're not weak because the wound is still tender. You're strong because you've chosen to stay soft, to stay praying, to rise again into mercy. Psalm 91 is not a quick fix. It is a dwelling place, a shelter for those learning to live in the slow rhythm of restoration. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10, the Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus 14:14. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. Psalm 147:3. This is where you are, still healing, still trusting, still returning. And that faith, even quiet, even small, is moving mountains unseen. You're not behind, you're in process. And the process is holy. Are you measuring healing by speed or by surrender? Where can you invite God into the in-between moments today? What would it mean to stop rushing and start resting? If you're tired of pretending to be okay, let today be a day of honesty. Comment below or journal these words. God, I trust you, even when I don't feel healed. Let this be your sacred start. Healing is happening. Keep coming back to the one who never stops restoring. Time can move forward, but healing in God's hands does not always follow the pace we expect. Some wounds do not fade with the days. Some aches survive the turning of the calendar. You've whispered to yourself, I should be past this by now. But God is not counting days. He's cultivating depth. His healing is not measured by time past, but by trust built. Psalm 23:3 doesn't say he distracts or dismisses our pain. It says he restores my soul. Restoration is not a shortcut. It is a sacred realignment that reaches into places even time cannot touch. This morning, God isn't rushing you forward. He's inviting you to rest deeper. What time alone cannot heal, God's timing can redeem. His timing is not punishment, it is precision. Dr. Anita Phillips reminds us that God won't rush what requires your heart's realignment. That alignment might feel like silence, but silence is not absence, it's intimacy. It's your soul learning to stay even when it doesn't see change. Healing is not performance, it's presence. And today, your presence in prayer is enough. You're not being overlooked. You're being held tenderly, thoroughly, wisely. Pope Leo XIV once said, "The delays of heaven are not rejections, they are refinements." You are not stuck. You are sacredly paused in a space God designed for your heart to breathe again. That breath, that pause is not failure, it is formation. Each anxious thought, each sleepless night, each prayer whispered in weariness is soil where the deepest healing grows. God isn't tracking your progress by milestones or deadlines. He's watching for surrender. This morning, as you show up again, not with answers, but with open hands, you're saying, "God, I'm still here." And his response is steady and certain, "So am I." Don't confuse lack of movement with lack of meaning. God's miracles often happen in stillness. This is not a delay, it's a deepening, a return to the one who doesn't require your strength, only your surrender. Today may look like yesterday on the surface, but your soul is shifting. You're more honest, more tender, more yielded. God is restoring parts of you you didn't know needed healing. And while the world may urge you to move on, heaven invites you to move closer. Ecclesiastes 3:11 says, "He has made everything beautiful in its time, not your time, his." Psalm 31:24 encourages, "Be strong and take heart, all you who hope in the Lord." Strength is not always action. It's the decision to stay rooted when you feel like running. 2 Peter 3:9 reminds us, "The Lord is not slow in keeping his promise. His slowness is not neglect, it's nurture." So, let today breathe. Let the grace of this moment linger longer than your impulse to rush. You're not behind, you're being rebuilt by divine timing. And that timing heals what time alone never could. Are you allowing God's timing to unfold, or are you resisting what doesn't move fast enough? What if today's waiting is the very place healing begins? Can you name one area where time has not healed you, but God's timing can? He has made everything beautiful in its time. Ecclesiastes 3:11, "Be strong and take heart, all you who hope in the Lord." Psalm 31:24, "The Lord is not slow in keeping his promise." 2 Peter 3:9. If you felt discouraged by how long healing is taking, take one moment today to pray slowly, not urgently. Say, "God, I surrender my timeline. Heal me in your rhythm." Share this prayer with someone who needs to stop hurrying and start healing. Let today breathe. Let grace linger. There is a sacred ache that rises when we witness suffering that is not our own. An ache not rooted in personal wounds, but in divine empathy. It presses gently against your spirit when you hear the cries of the innocent, when a stranger's pain stirs something holy in you, when silence feels like the only faithful response. This morning, your healing is not a solitary journey. It intersects with the greater grief of the world. Some wounds cannot be spoken. Some griefs are buried so deep they defy language. yet every silent cry still reaches the throne of God. Romans 8:26 assures us that the Spirit intercedes with groanings too deep for words. And maybe that's your truest prayer today. Not crafted phrases, but a soul cracked open in compassion. When you kneel not just for yourself, but for every child wandering through war-torn streets, every parent mourning unspeakable loss, every soul caught in pain too vast for comprehension. Intercession is not sympathy from afar, it's spiritual solidarity. It's your heart saying, God, meet them there. And when you do, healing flows both ways. Pope Leo the Catholic said, when we lift the broken to heaven, healing flows not only downward, but inward. Your tears are not weakness, they are wakefulness. This morning prayer is an act of mercy. It widens the borders of your soul. It reminds you that the heart of God beats for every nation, every stranger, every suffering one. You don't need to know all the facts to pray with fire. You don't need eloquence to move heaven. Your compassion is enough. Your presence in prayer is power. God is not looking for political clarity. He's looking for hearts willing to carry each other's burdens, even in mystery. Psalm 9:9 says, "The Lord is a refuge for the oppressed, a stronghold in times of trouble." When you pause today to lift the innocent, you enter into that refuge, both as a giver and a receiver. Because healing isn't just about getting well, it's about becoming whole. And wholeness grows when your prayers reach beyond yourself. You are not losing focus, you are gaining fullness. And in this rhythm of praying, trusting, and becoming, something shifts. Not just in heaven, but in you. Lord, we lift to you all who suffer in silence today. From war, fear, and destruction, cover the innocent with your mercy. Bind up the broken-hearted. Wrap them in a peace that no violence can steal. Shine your healing light where hatred has eclipsed hope. You are the God of the oppressed, the comforter of those who mourn, the refuge of those without a home. We do not ask you to choose sides, but to choose souls, to shelter them, to rescue them, to hold them in your unshakable love. Amen. This act of intercession is not separate from your healing. It's an extension of it. As you pray for others, heaven moves in you too. And in that shared silence, in that whispered mercy, something sacred is born. A new kind of strength, a deeper kind of wholeness. When was the last time you brought someone else's suffering into your own prayers? How might your healing expand if it included compassion for others? What does it mean to believe God sees every soul, not just yours? Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Matthew 5:9. The Lord is a refuge for the oppressed, a stronghold in times of trouble. Psalm 9:9. Weep with those who weep. Romans 12:15. If this prayer awakened compassion in you, let it continue. Light a candle. Whisper a name. Write a prayer for someone you'll never meet. Healing is sacred when it overflows. God sees every heart, including yours. Keep praying, keep becoming. God does not raise his voice when your faith trembles. He does not sigh when your healing takes longer than others expected. He does not grow impatient when you feel stuck. Instead, he leans in. He draws near to the quiet place others overlooked, and in that stillness, he whispers a promise not wrapped in thunder, but clothed in mercy. I will restore you gently. Jeremiah 30:17 is not a suggestion, it's a declaration. I will restore you to health and heal your wounds, not once you've earned it, not once you've explained your delay. Now, as you are, his restoration begins where your strength ends. It's not a reward for resilience. It's the embrace that meets you at collapse. Pope Leo XIV reminds us, the soul that falls into the arms of God finds itself lifted, not scolded. This morning is your permission to fall again, not into shame, but into surrender, into the arms that never push too hard, never ask you to rush, and never leave when the process gets slow. You don't have to fake progress to be worthy of healing. You don't need to justify why it still hurts. God isn't watching your timeline. He's holding your heart. Psalm 91:4 says, "He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge." Feathers, soft. Wings, shelter. That's how gently he comes. Not with a clock, but with comfort. Not with conditions, but with compassion. Even your anxiety, even your questions, even the places you wish healed faster. He covers them all. He works quietly, carefully, lovingly. His presence doesn't demand performance. It offers peace. There is no hurry in his healing, only hope. And when you whisper, "God, I'm still here," his response remains, "So am I." The pressure to be further along falls away when you realize he never asked you to rush, only to return. So let go of the guilt. Let go of the need to impress. Let yourself be loved right in the middle of your becoming. Have you ever confused God's gentleness for absence? In what area of your life do you need God to restore you slowly and softly? What would it look like to allow yourself to be gently healed today? I will restore you to health and heal your wounds. Jeremiah 30:17. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. A bruised reed he will not break, and a smoldering wick he will not snuff out. Isaiah 42:3. If this morning reminded you that God heals with gentleness, share this truth with someone who feels unworthy of restoration. Let them know healing isn't earned, it's received. Whisper this as your prayer today. God, restore me gently. Then trust him to do just that. Before healing ever shows itself on the surface, it begins quietly, like thread pulled gently through torn cloth. Each morning prayer, even when whispered through weary breath or soaked in silent tears, is the first stitch in the sacred work of restoration. You may not feel it, you may wonder if your words matter, but in the stillness of each sunrise, something eternal is unfolding. Prayer is not a test of strength, it's an act of trust. And every act of trust becomes a stitch, binding your soul back together. Psalm 23:3 says, "He restores my soul." Not once, not briefly, but continuously, faithfully, gently. God is not looking for perfect prayers. He is weaving healing with every sigh, every pause, every step toward his presence. Pope Leo XIV said, "The mender of the soul sows quietly, without spectacle, but with eternal thread." That thread is moving now, through your pain, through your doubt, through your decision to show up again. And in that showing up, healing has already begun. This morning you didn't just pray, you entered into a rhythm that heaven honors, a sacred rhythm that continues whether you feel it or not. Your prayer is not performance, it is participation. You're not earning healing, you're receiving it. As T.D. Jakes once said, if you keep showing up to the altar, God will keep showing up to your wound. And this morning, he did. Your choice to kneel, even in confusion or weariness, is not small. It's a defiant act against despair. It is the quiet victory of one who refuses to give up. Your daily prayer is not about immediate change. It's about faithful return. It's the steady beat of restoration that silences shame, calms anxiety, and welcomes peace. Even when you feel unchanged, even when the ache lingers, each word you speak is sacred. Your Father knows what you need before you ask Him, and He is already responding. With mercy, with nearness, with love that mends. How has your view of prayer changed when you realize it's part of the healing process itself? What would it look like to treat your daily prayer as a sacred thread in your restoration? Are you willing to show up in prayer even when you don't feel different yet? He restores my soul. Psalm 23:3. The prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective. James 5:16. Your Father knows what you need before you ask Him. Matthew 6:8. If today's prayer became your first stitch of healing, share this message with someone who's afraid to start again. Invite them into the rhythm. Whisper this truth into your own soul. Each prayer is a stitch. Each stitch is healing. God is not finished with me yet. Then rise, healed a little more than yesterday. There is a kind of pain that doesn't scream. It lingers quietly, like fog that wraps around your spirit and won't lift. You pray, but the words feel dry. You worship, but your heart feels distant. You believe, but it's like holding your breath underwater. This isn't failure. It's not spiritual regression. It's the sacred stillness where God does His most invisible, intimate work. Sometimes, when your soul feels stuck, it's not a sign of disconnection. It's the sign of a deeper healing taking root. Psalm 42:5 says, "Why, my soul, are you downcast? Why so disturbed within me? Put your hope in God." Hope in moments like these is not a roar. It's a whisper, a flicker, a decision to stay when everything inside wants to retreat. And God honors that staying. Pope Leo XIV once said, "When the soul no longer knows how to move, let it be carried." This morning, you don't need to perform, you don't need to push. You only need to be still long enough for heaven to lift what you cannot carry. Spiritual healing rarely moves in a straight line. It revisits, uncovers, and reweaves with gentleness and precision. When your soul feels stuck, it's not proof you're failing. It's proof that God is working beneath the surface, even in the silence. The world says progress looks like motion, but God says healing looks like trust. Psalm 91 doesn't call us to run. It calls us to dwell. Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. This morning is not about moving forward. It's about staying close. Let yourself pause. Let yourself rest. T.D. Jakes reminds us, God does more in your stillness than you could do in your striving. So let that stillness hold you now. Don't rehearse guilt. Don't explain why you should be further. Simply receive what God is offering in this quiet space. Rest, presence, and the beginning of renewal. This is not a detour. It's the divine invitation to healing. Right here, right now. Where have you felt spiritually stuck lately, and how might God be meeting you there? What does it mean for you to rest rather than strive in this moment? Are you willing to trust God to carry you, even when you feel unable to move forward? Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for Him. Psalm 37:7. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Matthew 11:28. Don't think about it all. Who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion. Philippians 1:6. If your soul feels stuck today, don't rush past it. Pause here. Breathe. Whisper, God, I trust you to carry me. Share this with someone who feels like they've hit a wall. Remind them, being stuck is not the end. It's the moment God draws closest to lift you into healing again. Stillness often feels like a void. No noise, no clarity. Just the quiet ache of waiting. But in the presence of God, stillness is not a void. It's a vessel. a sanctuary where restoration begins before it ever announces itself. You may wake up this morning longing for movement, clarity, progress, yet Psalm 23:2 speaks of a different path. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. Stillness is not where healing ends, it's where it begins. Not with noise or performance, but with presence. In the silence you might resist, God is already moving. Dr. Anita Phillips said, "Stillness is not the absence of progress. It is the sacred space where your soul catches up to your healing. What feels like a pause may be heaven's preparation. You're not being overlooked, you're being gently realigned." Healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet waters lapping against broken places, slowly smoothing the sharp edges of pain. You don't have to prove that you're growing. You don't have to force a breakthrough to validate your faith. Your willingness to rest is a powerful act of trust. Psalm 91 invites you not to sprint, but to dwell. Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. This is the shelter of stillness, the holy space where your soul doesn't have to perform, it only has to be. Pope Leo XIV wrote, "Stillness is heaven's operating table. There the divine physician does his most delicate work. Let this morning be that sacred surgery. Breathe slowly. Let go of the pressure to feel something dramatic. Let your quiet surrender speak louder than striving." God is not absent in the stillness. He is most intimate there. His silence is not a rejection, it's refinement. He is restoring you in ways too deep for words. Trust that even here, even now, even in what feels like nothing, everything is beginning. Have you been resisting stillness, believing it means nothing is happening? How might God be inviting you to experience restoration through rest? Can you see today's stillness as a gift rather than a delay? In repentance and rest is your salvation. In quietness and trust is your strength. Isaiah 30:15. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. Psalm 23:2-3. Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. Psalm 91:1. If today's stillness has felt like a burden, let it become your blessing. Breathe deeply and whisper, "God, I welcome your healing in this silence." Share this message with someone weary of waiting. Stillness is not a sign of absence. It is the sacred space where miracles begin to form. We often approach healing like a race to finish or a task to complete. We want God to erase the pain quickly, to answer instantly, to deliver relief the moment we bow our heads. But healing doesn't operate on demand. It flows through divine dwelling. Psalm 91:1 doesn't say, "Whoever rushes to the Most High." It says, "Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty." That word, dwell, isn't about urgency. It's about trust, stillness, presence. God is not offering you a shortcut through suffering. He's offering you a shelter within it. This morning, healing won't come with fanfare. It will come quietly as you rest under His wings. Not a bypass lane, but a place of refuge. Not a fix, but a breath. He doesn't always remove the fire, but He always steps into it with you. And in that sacred nearness, you are not just protected, you are being healed, one breath at a time. Pope Leo XIV once said, "A soul that chooses the shelter of God finds peace not in resolution, but in refuge." This shifts how we see our morning prayer. We don't pray to bypass pain. We pray to be held through it. God's promise is not escape. it's covering. His message isn't get over it, but get under my wings. And when you do, you'll find that healing isn't found in fixing, it's found in dwelling. Psalm 91:4 says, "He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge." That covering doesn't demand performance, it offers peace. The world seeks shortcuts, God seeks surrender. The world rewards speed, God honors stillness. You may feel broken still, but if you are dwelling in him, you are safe. You are seen, and you are healing. Not in haste, but in holy time. Let today be about staying, not striving. About breathing, not proving. About dwelling, not dashing. Because that's where true restoration lives, in the refuge, not the rush. Have you been using prayer as a shortcut or as a shelter? What would change if you viewed God's presence as your healing space, not your escape route? How can you remain under his covering, even when healing feels slow? Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. You are my hiding place. You will protect me from trouble. Psalm 32:7 will cover you with his feathers. Psalm 91:4. If you've been praying for shortcuts, but today feel drawn to the shelter, pause and rest. Whisper, "Lord, hide me in your presence. I trust your process." Share this with someone rushing to heal and invite them to slow down beneath the wings of the Almighty. Restoration lives in the refuge. Stay there. We often come to prayer hoping it will erase the ache, bypass the sorrow, or somehow leap over the parts of our story we're tired of revisiting. But daily prayer was never meant to help you escape the pain. It was meant to walk you through it, slowly, tenderly, faithfully. True prayer doesn't skip the valley, it lights a lantern inside it. When you kneel before God and whisper, "Lord, I'm still hurting," you are stepping into sanctification. Psalm 91:3 speaks this promise into our ache. Surely he will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence, not because you're strong, not because you've moved on, but because he is near, especially in the mess. Daily prayer isn't the absence of pain, it's the presence of God in the middle of it, and that presence changes everything. It doesn't erase your humanity, it redeems it. D.D. Jakes said, "God may not take the pain away immediately, but he will give it purpose." That's what happens when you pray through the pain. It becomes sacred space, a place where God doesn't just hear you, he holds you. A place where your tears are not evidence of broken faith, but of brave faith. Every prayer whispered through grief becomes a thread of grace. Every scar offered in surrender becomes part of your testimony. Pope Leo XIV wrote, "The soul that prays in pain becomes the chalice where grace is poured most generously." Don't sanitize your prayers, sanctify them. Let your ache be honest. Let your story be open. Let your wounds breathe in the presence of the wounded healer. You don't have to wait until you're healed to come close. Your pain isn't in the way, it's the bridge. Your suffering isn't a detour, it's a sanctuary, because the more you bring to God, the more he transforms. And when you trust him with your ache, healing begins not beyond the pain, but inside it. What pain have you tried to pray around instead of through? How might God be inviting you to sanctify, not skip, what still hurts? Are you willing to believe that your wounds are welcome in his presence? Surely he will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence. Psalm 91:3. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. Psalm 147:3. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. 2 Corinthians 12:9. If you've been afraid to bring your pain into your prayer life, let today change that. Whisper this truth: God, I won't hide my pain. I'll hand it to you. Then share this with someone who needs to hear that holiness lives even in the hurting places. You are being sanctified, not in spite of your wounds, but through them. There is a softness to God's healing that the hurried world cannot comprehend. It doesn't crash in or make headlines. It arrives quietly, like the hush before dawn. Pope Leo XIV once said, "The soul is not healed by force, but by the slow stitching of heaven's hand." Perhaps that's exactly what your spirit needs today. Not a sudden shift, but a sacred reminder that God's hand is still at work, even when it's silent. Maybe your soul still feels frayed, unraveled by disappointment, tender from unanswered prayers, weary from trying to hold it all together. You've clung to Psalm 23, "He restores my soul," and wondered when that restoration will finally feel complete. But God doesn't rush the places He values most. He heals at the pace of love, slowly, carefully. His mercy doesn't arrive with noise, it arrives with depth, reaching the wounds you've tried to forget and mending them, thread by holy thread. This healing isn't about instant relief, it's about enduring restoration. Psalm 91:4 promises, "He will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will find refuge." That's where the work begins, in the shelter, not the spotlight. You may not have words for your pain, but God has the touch to tend it. You may not feel the needle move, but every breath of prayer, every pause in His presence is part of the mending. The enemy whispers that slowness means failure, but heaven speaks a different truth. Slowness means care. It means reverence. It means you are being healed, not in haste, but in holiness. Each time you return to prayer, whether with strength or sighs, you're re-entering the sacred process. Pope Leo XIV reminds us that grace doesn't demand speed, it honors surrender. So if you're still waiting, still wondering, still hoping, good. That means your soul is still soft enough to be sown. You are not behind, you are being held, and the hand of heaven has not let go. Are you allowing God the time and space to mend your soul fully, not just quickly? Where do you feel heaven's hand working, even if you can't explain it? What would happen if you stopped resisting the slow and trusted the sacred? He restores my soul. He guides me along the right paths for His name's sake. Psalm 23:3. He will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will find refuge. This being so, what would happen if you stopped resisting the slow and trusted His wings? You will find refuge. Psalm 91:4. The Lord is compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in love. Psalm 138. If today reminded you that healing is slow but sacred, rest in that truth. Whisper, God, let heaven's hand continue its work in me. Share this with someone who needs permission to heal slowly. Let the world race ahead. Your soul is being remade, patiently, purposefully, perfectly. There are moments in healing when trusting God doesn't feel like peace, it feels like falling. You loosen your grip on what you expected. You release your need to understand. And in that surrender, it feels like there's nothing holding you up. This is the holy tension of trust, the free fall before the net appears, the space between letting go and being held. Psalm 91:2 declares, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. But trust isn't always a feeling of calm. Sometimes it's a trembling decision to believe when everything inside you feels unsteady. You've prayed, you've hoped, Yet the swirl of emotion hasn't settled. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you real. And real trust is not built in clarity. It's born in free fall. It's the choice to believe God is catching you, even when you can't feel the landing yet. Lisa Bevere said, "Faith is not the absence of fear. It's the presence of courage in the midst of it." And courage is often quiet. It doesn't shout. It whispers, "I trust you," while your hands shake. It clings to prayer even when words fail. It returns to Romans 8:28 and dares to believe that all things, even this, will be worked for good. Pope Leo X wrote, "To trust when nothing holds you is the holiest act of faith." If you feel suspended today between what you can't control and what you can't yet see, know this: God is not beneath you with judgment. He is beneath you with grace. Trust isn't the absence of falling. It's the presence of a net you can't always see, but that has never failed to catch a single soul willing to surrender. You are not plummeting into failure. You are falling into faith. Today, if your soul feels like it's an emotional free fall, don't panic. Let yourself fall, not into despair, but into the arms of the God who never lets go. You are not broken because you feel afraid. You are becoming whole through surrender. This trust reshapes you. It teaches your heart how to be held. It turns unraveling into remaking. So let go. Let grace gather you in the space between fear and faith. Let healing happen in the release, in the silence, in the softness of surrender. When has trust in God felt more like fear than peace for you? What does emotional freefall reveal about your deepest beliefs? Are you willing to trust that God is catching you, even if you can't feel it? When I am afraid, I put my trust in you. Psalm 56:3. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. Proverbs 3:5. He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Psalm 91:2. If today's prayer met you in free fall, whisper, "Lord, I don't need to feel steady. I need to feel you." Share this with someone barely holding on. Let them know trust doesn't always look strong. Sometimes it looks like falling into the arms of a faithful God who never lets go. There are moments in your healing journey when trusting God doesn't feel like peace. It feels like falling. You loosen your grip on control. You release your expectations, and for a breathless moment, it feels like you're suspended in midair with nothing beneath you. That's the sacred tension of true trust, the leap before you see the net, the surrender before you feel the safety. Psalm 91:2 says, "He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust." But what does that mean when everything inside you is trembling? It means trusting not because you feel strong, but because you believe God is strong enough to catch you. It's not about calm emotions. It's about courageous surrender. Trust isn't the absence of anxiety. It's the act of choosing God in the middle of it. And that choice, even when it feels like free fall, is where the transformation begins. Lisa Bevere reminds us, faith is not the absence of fear. It's the presence of courage in the midst of it. And courage often whispers, not roars. It sounds like morning prayer through trembling lips. It looks like showing up again, even when everything in you wants to shut down. It's given God not just your faith, but your fear. Romans 8:28 promises, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him." That includes the moments that feel uncertain, fragile, even terrifying. Pope Leo X wrote, "To trust when nothing holds you is the holiest act of faith." If today feels like emotional freefall, you are not spiraling into failure. You are falling into grace. God is not waiting at the bottom. He is beneath you, beside you, within every moment of descent. And He never lets go. This kind of trust reshapes you. It teaches your heart how to be held instead of how to hold everything together. It transforms panic into presence. It turns surrender into strength. You don't need to rush to find solid ground today. You only need to let yourself be held in the space between the letting go and the landing. That's where grace is. That's where healing breathes. And that's where your soul is learning how to trust, not the ground, but the God who carries you through the air. When has trust in God felt more like fear than peace for you? What does emotional freefall reveal about your deepest beliefs? Are you willing to trust that God is catching you, even if you can't feel it? When I am afraid, I put my trust in you. Psalm 56:3. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. Proverbs 3:5. He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Psalm 91:2. If today's prayer met you in freefall, whisper, Lord, I don't need to feel steady. I need to feel you. Share this with someone barely holding on. Let them know trust doesn't always look strong. Sometimes it looks like falling into the arms of a faithful God who never lets go. Healing is both a miracle and a process, woven together like sunlight breaking through dawn. We often long for a dramatic shift, a clear moment when pain disappears and joy rushes in. Yet most healing unfolds quietly, in prayers whispered through tears, in waves that crest and recede, in the faithful return to presence even when nothing feels different. Psalm 91:4 offers refuge, not escape. He will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will find refuge, not just once or on the healed days, but every morning, every breath, every broken moment. You are not failing because healing isn't instant. You are human. You are becoming. Pope Leo XIV reminds us, the miracle is not always in the healing itself, it is in the heart that chooses to wait. So today, if all you have is a mustard seed of trust, that's enough. You are not behind. You are standing on holy ground, moving in rhythm with grace. Today's morning prayer is not a checklist. It is the breath of your healing rhythm. Every amen offered through doubt, every tear held in hope, every moment you return to God despite your questions, these are the silent longings of your soul being remade. T.D. Jakes says, "Don't let the enemy convince you that the process means God has left. The process is proof that God is near. You may not feel changed yet, but heaven sees. Each unclenched fist, each surrendered expectation, each step taken in faith. Your faith doesn't need to look large, it just needs to look like trust. So inhale grace, exhale strain. Anchor your heart not in what you feel, but in the truth that healing happens, both suddenly and slowly. Both the breakthrough and the becoming are moving through you right now. So breathe this in again. You are healing, not because everything is fixed, but because you return. Not because pain is gone, but because presence remains. Both miracle and process, both whisper and sunrise, both immediate tenderness and unfolding restoration. Your morning prayer, a mustard seed moment, is not small, it is sacred. Today, breathe that in. Whisper, God, thank you for the miracle and the process. Share this with someone who needs to know they're not broken, they're becoming. One breath, one prayer, one sacred moment at a time. Waiting can feel like punishment, leaving you wondering if you're stranded while others move ahead. But in God's presence, waiting is not punishment, it is preparation. Psalm 23:3 says He restores my soul. Not all at once, not on your schedule, but in quiet moments beside green pastures and still waters. He is restoring you. True restoration isn't dramatic. It's the simple act of breathing, of showing up again when you want to run. In that stillness, your soul begins to remember. You are not forgotten. You are not stuck. You are being healed deeply, even if the changes are hidden. The shepherd never rushes. He leads in rhythm, step by patient step. When you're too weary to walk, he doesn't shame you, he lifts you. Psalm 23 isn't a checklist for the strong. It's a sanctuary for the weary. He makes me lie down. He leads me. He restores me. These aren't assignments. They're movements of mercy. This is God meeting you not based on performance, but on his own faithful heart. Pope Leo XIII reminds us, the shepherd never leaves his sheep unattended. His silence is a sanctuary where the soul learns to rest. So if all you can do today is rest, know that you are exactly where you need to be. Rest is not weakness. It is worship. It is your declaration that God is still at work, even when you feel nothing. Healing is both miracle and process, woven together like dawn's first light. We crave dramatic breakthroughs, but most healing unfolds in quiet whispers, not headlines. You may feel the ache stronger today, the pain deeper than yesterday. That doesn't mean healing failed. It means the process is sacred. Psalm 91:4 promises refuge. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. That's God's shelter, not in fleeting improvement, but in steadfast nearness. If you long for a sign, remember, even a mustard seed of trust is enough. Pope Leo XIV said, the miracle is not always in the healing itself. It is in the heart that chooses to wait. So today, if all you have is a mustard seed of hope, it's enough. You're waiting, you're returning, your perseverance. This is your miracle in motion. Spiritual healing is a rhythm, not a race. Your morning prayer is the breath of that healing rhythm. Every amen whispered through tears, every tear shed in hopeful trust, every moment you come back to God in spite of uncertainty. These are sacred acts of becoming. T.D. Jakes warns, don't let the enemy convince you that the process means God has left. The process is proof that God is near. You may not feel transformed yet, but heaven sees every step, every faltered breath, every moment of surrender. Anchor your soul not to how you feel, but to the truth that healing is happening right now. One seed of trust, one prayer at a time. You don't have to bear the weight alone. God is walking with you, carrying you, shaping you in silence. Psalm 23 assures you, he makes me lie down, he leads me, he restores my soul. Let that be your refuge when waiting stretches on and your heart aches for change. Lisa Bevere once said, rest is not a luxury, it's warfare. Your rest today is spiritual resistance against fear, striving, and the world's pressures. It's an act of faith that proclaims God's presence matters more than how fast the pain fades. So breathe this in. You are healing, not because the pain's gone, but because you remain. Not because you've arrived, but because you're walking, sometimes stumbling, always seen. Today, whisper, God, I receive your restoration, even in the waiting. Thank you for the miracle and the process. Then share this with someone holding their breath in hope. Invite them into the rhythm of sacred waiting. You are not forgotten. You are being healed by the shepherd who restores while you wait. Anxiety can distort what is true and magnify what is uncertain. It makes your body panic, your thoughts race, and your spirit question whether healing is even possible. But the miracle of God's presence is that He doesn't wait for the storm to stop. He steps into it with you. Psalm 91:1 doesn't promise freedom from fear before peace arrives. It says, "Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty." Rest isn't earned after chaos. It is offered in the very midst of it. That's what morning prayer gives you. Not an escape route, but a sacred re-entry into the calm that only God can provide. In prayer, your panic meets His peace. Meditation is not about emptying your mind. It's about filling your soul with what's eternal when everything internal feels unstable. "Be still and know that I am God," He says, not because your anxiety is gone, but because His presence is greater than your fear. That is where your healing begins. Dr. Anita Phillips teaches that the body remembers trauma, but the soul remembers truth. Meditation becomes the bridge between what you fear and what God has already spoken over you. When you wake and choose prayer over panic, you are not pretending you're okay. You're proclaiming that anxiety is not your authority. God is. Each breath becomes a declaration. I am safe. I am seen. I am held. Pope Leo the Catholic once wrote, "Let the trembling soul be held in the rhythm of holy breath." There God reorders chaos into calm. That's not poetic. It's prophetic. You don't have to silence the fear to feel faith. You just have to show up, breathe, and let Jesus hold what feels too heavy to carry. Even if your thoughts race and your heart trembles, every sacred inhale you take becomes a step back into peace. You're not escaping the pain. You're anchoring into the presence of the one who never shakes. Spiritual anxiety doesn't disqualify you from faith, it draws you deeper into it. The world says peace comes after fear is conquered, but God says peace is a person and His name is Jesus. Whispering His name is enough. Breathing in His nearness is enough. Prayer doesn't require eloquence, it requires honesty. This morning, you don't need the right words, you just need willingness. Even a trembling Jesus carries more power than any perfect sentence. Let that name become your rhythm. Let it meet your unrest with sacred reassurance. You don't have to fix the anxiety before you pray. You just have to invite God into it. He's already there, waiting to show you that healing doesn't require perfect peace. It begins with presence. Keep breathing, keep whispering, keep returning even when it feels shaky. It's still sacred. Even when it's slow, it's still healing. This is not a spiritual setback, it's a spiritual step forward. How has anxiety shaped your view of God's presence in difficult seasons? 2. What would it look like to invite God into your anxiety instead of trying to pray it away? 3. Are you willing to trust that rest can begin before fear fully ends? Cast all your anxiety on Him because He cares for you. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. John 14:27. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. If anxiety has been louder than your faith lately, pause and let this moment reset you. Whisper, God, meet me in this fear. I believe you are greater. Then share this with someone overwhelmed by racing thoughts. Meditation and prayer aren't escape. They are entry points into peace. You are not alone in your storm. You are held. Some mornings we wake up hoping for a shift, a sign that today will be different, that the ache will lift, that healing has finally arrived. But when the weight remains and the silence stretches, discouragement quietly enters. You look around and see more cracks than progress, more questions than clarity. But God's message today is not silence. its sacred reassurance. You're still being made whole. Psalm 91:4 promises, His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. Not your escape route, not your fast track, your shield, your strength in the waiting. Healing is not always a burst of light. Sometimes it's the slow weaving of grace through each surrendered moment. What feels like delay is often divine design. What feels like regression is often deep repair. You may not see the full picture, but heaven is still paint, and the brushstrokes you can't see yet are the most faithful ones of all. Pope Leo XIV said, "The soul healed quickly often scars. The soul healed patiently becomes a vessel of compassion." That's what God is shaping in you. Not just relief, but restoration that makes you radiant with empathy. Not just wholeness for your sake, but wholeness that pours out to heal others. Lisa Bevere echoes this truth. God isn't just working on your situation, He's working on you in the situation, and that means this moment matters. This breath, this whisper of prayer, this decision to return again when nothing feels new. That's formation. That's sacred ground. Every time you choose stillness over striving, every time you trust the process instead of rushing it, you are deepening, you are becoming. Don't confuse silence for absence. Don't confuse repetition for stagnation. If you are still showing up, you are still healing. You are not stuck. You are being softened, strengthened, prepared. The enemy will try to convince you that no visible change means no progress. But God's healing isn't always loud. It's faithful. It's thorough. Philippians 1:6 speaks it clearly. He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion. Completion, not abandonment, not halfway, not disappointment. The one who started this work in you will finish it, not in haste, but in holiness. So if all you have today is a whisper, a flicker of hope, a breath of trust, that is enough. Your healing is not behind schedule. Your wholeness is not on pause. It's unfolding moment by moment in the sacred hands of the healer who never rushes what he loves. You are not forgotten. You are being formed into something more beautiful than you imagined. Something only God could make possible. What if your lack of visible progress is actually the sign of a deeper internal healing? 2. How would your prayers change if you truly believed God was still making you whole? 3. Are you willing to honor the process as much as you long for the result? Being confident of this, that He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion. Philippians 1:6. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. Psalm 91:4. He makes all things beautiful in its time. Ecclesiastes 3:11. If this reminded you that you are still being shaped, not forgotten, pause and give thanks. Whisper, God, thank you for still working on me. Then share this message with someone who feels unfinished and discouraged. Let them know healing is not over, wholeness is still unfolding, and God is not finished yet. Some mornings begin before the night ever truly ended. Your eyes open, but your spirit never closed. You've paced, pleaded, recited scripture in the dark, and still sleep slipped away like an untouchable tide. You feel the weight behind your eyes, the ache in your bones, the fog that no coffee can fix. But even in this weariness, God is present. Psalm 121:4 whispers hope into your unrest. Indeed, He who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. God has been awake with you, watching, holding, softly whispering peace into the chaos of your thoughts. You are not abandoned in exhaustion. You are embraced within it. The morning is not only for the rested, it is for the resting. where presence comes before power and grace holds what sleep cannot. Your value isn't measured by energy, clarity, or strength. God meets you in your lack. He doesn't wait for you to wake up perfect. He comes when you're barely functioning. Pope Leo the Catholic reminds us, the weary are the first to be welcomed by heaven's mercy. That includes you, who didn't sleep, who feels behind before the day begins. This morning is not for the triumphant, it's for the trusting. Even trembling trust is trust. Psalm 91 doesn't demand perfection. It offers shelter. Whoever dwells, that's you. Even now, even with shaky hands and heavy breath, God's wings don't lift you above the weariness. They hold you within it. Let this be the morning you stop striving and start surrendering. Let the fatigue become your offering. Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Not once you're stronger. Now. T.D. Jakes reminds us, God does his best work in tired people who still say yes, so say yes again. If it's a whisper, that's enough. Because the God who never sleeps has been keeping you through the night and is carrying you into the light. You are not behind. You are not disqualified. You are safe. You are seen. And even sleepless, you are still being made whole. Allow yourself to be held in his presence, not performance. Healing doesn't wait for rest. It accompanies you in the unrest. You don't need to craft perfect prayers or muster spiritual energy. You simply need presence. A breath, a step, a whisper. Let your breath be your prayer. Let your silence be your song. The world demands answers. God offers presence. The day may feel heavy, but his presence is not measured by felt strength. Even if your yes today is fragile, he calls it faith. Even if your prayer is few words, he hears the heart behind them. Even if your faith wavers, his love remains unwavering. Be still in him. Let the shelter of his wings be your sanctuary. Let your presence in his presence be your prayer. Healing isn't reserved for the vibrant. It whispers into the weary. May this quiet surrender be the start of your rest and your renewal. What if your lack of visible progress is actually the sign of a deeper internal healing? 2. How would your prayers change if you truly believed God was still making you whole? 3. Are you willing to honor the process as much as you long for the result? Being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion. Philippians 1:6. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. Psalm 91:4. He makes all things beautiful in its time. Ecclesiastes 3:11. If this reminded you that you are still being shaped, not forgotten, pause and give thanks. Whisper, God, thank you for still working on me. Then share this message with someone who feels unfinished and discouraged. Let them know healing is not over, wholeness is still unfolding, and God is not finished yet. You've tried to fix it. You've tried to make sense of the pain, to manage the process, to measure your progress. But healing doesn't bloom from control, it blossoms from trust. This is the paradox of spiritual awakening. You don't rise by doing more, you rise by letting go. Psalm 23:1 begins with a declaration of surrender. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. This isn't the voice of control, it's the voice of dependence. When you truly trust the shepherd, you stop chasing solutions and start receiving peace. God's message today isn't figure it out, it's follow me. You don't need to know how this ends. You only need to stay near to the one who holds both beginning and end. Surrender, not your effort, opens the door to transformation. With every small act of letting go, Every breath that says, "I don't have to manage this alone." Your soul awakens, your spirit begins to rise, not because control is relinquished, but because connection is deepened. Pope Leo XIV wrote, "Spiritual awakening is not found in the clarity of plans, but in the humility of dependence." That means today's breakthrough may not be in your situation, but in your soul. You may still feel unhealed, still see the ache, but awakening often begins when grip softens. Lisa Bevere reminds us there is no awakening without surrender. When you let go, God begins to move in ways you couldn't plan or predict. This morning, prayer shifts you from performance to posture. It doesn't change your circumstances. It changes your heart. It says, "God, I trust you to do what I cannot." Trust isn't passive, it's powerful. It breaks anxiety's hold. It calms the restless mind. It unlocks the cage of needing to control. So breathe again, surrender again, trust again. Your spiritual awakening doesn't require perfect clarity. It only requires yielded trust. Psalm 37:5 says, "Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in Him and He will do this." Not you, Him. So this morning, stop carrying burdens meant for God. Lay down the weight of fixing, mastering, micromanaging. Control is not your responsibility. It never was. When you release your hold, you make room for His. Your act of trust becomes the catalyst for healing, whether you feel it in your body, emotions, or situation. Trust begins the journey, not its destination. It teaches the soul how to abide, not perform. Every breath that whispers, "I trust you," builds a pathway to peace that control could never carve. Even in the uncertainty, His presence is your compass. You don't need perfect words, you just need presence. Let morning prayer be the sound of surrender, not strategy. Let your breath seal a covenant of dependence. Let the act of showing up, however shaky, become your sign of trust. You don't have to rid the pain to welcome His presence. You just have to turn toward Him. His voice doesn't require your answers. He only waits for your yielded heart. And in that space, spiritual awakening begins, not because the battle ends, but because you've stopped fighting alone. God isn't asking you to control the healing. He's asking you to trust the healer. What if your lack of visible progress is actually the sign of a deeper internal healing? 2. How would your prayers change if you truly believed God was still making you whole? 3. Are you willing to honor the process as much as you long for the result? The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. Psalm 23:1. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Proverbs 3:5. Commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him, and He will do this. Psalm 37:5. If today's message reminded you that awakening begins where control ends, let go. Whisper, "God, I don't need to know, I need to trust." Then share this with someone exhausted by trying to hold everything together. Remind them, spiritual healing begins the moment we release the need to manage what only God can mend. Some seasons feel like stillness has swallowed the sound of heaven. You pray with urgency only to be met with quiet. You bring your pain to the altar again and again, only to hear no reply. And that silence, it can feel unbearable. But silence is not absence. It is not abandonment. It is often the clearest invitation to rest in what cannot yet be seen or spoken. Psalm 91 opens with sacred clarity. Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. It doesn't say whoever hears, it says whoever dwells. The healing isn't dependent on what you hear. It's rooted in where you remain. If you are dwelling in Him, then healing is already underway. even if your ears haven't caught a single word. This is the moment in your journey where trust deepens, not because God has grown louder, but because you've grown quieter. Pope Leo the Catholic reminds us, when heaven is silent, the soul must learn to feel what it cannot yet hear. That is the invitation this morning. Let go of the demand to hear and lean into the call to dwell. Be still, not because you're finished, but because He's faithful. Be silent, not because you've stopped believing, but because you've started abiding. Lisa Bever says, God doesn't speak over noise. Sometimes He quiets everything just to draw you closer. If you feel wrapped in silence today, consider it a cocoon, not a cage. The stillness isn't punishment, it's protection. The quiet isn't a void, it's a womb. Something is forming inside you. Something sacred, something eternal. Spiritual healing is not always audible. It is atmospheric. It shifts the soul before it shifts the circumstances. In the holy quiet, God is restoring you in ways too deep for words. You don't need thunder to confirm your healing. You need trust to continue walking through it. The stillness is part of the process. The rest is part of the restoration. The quiet is where your soul learns the sound of being held, not hurried. Psalm 23:3 echoes this. He restores my soul. No timeline, no noise, just promise. The silence does not mean the end. It is the sacred space where God begins again. You are being healed even now, even when nothing feels different, even when your soul is still waiting for the next word. You don't have to manufacture words. You don't need the perfect prayer or the fitting scripture. All you need is presence, your presence in His. Let this moment of spiritual quiet renew your faith that God is not only the voice you hear, He's the shelter you're in. Even in silence, His presence is working. Even in waiting, His timing is wise. Healing happens in the atmosphere of trust, not always with a tone or a sign, but within the resonance of surrender. You are not forgotten. You are being held. You are being healed. What if your lack of visible progress is actually the sign of a deeper internal healing? 2. How would your prayers change if you truly believed God was still making you whole? 3. Are you willing to honor the process as much as you long for the result? Being confident of this, that He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion, Philippians 1:6. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart, Psalm 91:4. He makes all things beautiful in its time, Ecclesiastes 3:11. If this reminded you that you are still being shaped, not forgotten, pause and give thanks. Whisper, God, thank you for still working on me. Then share this message with someone who feels unfinished and discouraged. Let them know healing is not over. Wholeness is still unfolding, and God is not finished yet. Every day you rise and pray, even when the pain hasn't lifted, even when the answers haven't come, is a declaration that you believe God finishes what He begins. You may not see the final chapter yet, but you are walking in its unfolding. Each morning prayer, each whispered psalm, each breath of surrender is not just surviving, it is sowing. You are planting seeds in the soil of healing, and God is faithful to water what you've entrusted to Him. Philippians 1:6 promises, He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion. That includes your healing. That includes your restoration. That includes your silent, persistent return to the presence of the one who has never stopped working on your soul. Trust is not passive. It is the powerful rhythm of letting go and leaning in again and again. trust is what brings you here today. Pope Leo XIV once said, "Faith is not a one-time fire. It is the steady oil of daily surrender." That's what you're living now. A holy rhythm, one that doesn't demand drama but delights in devotion. You've come to understand that God doesn't measure healing by speed or spectacle. He measures it by nearness, by surrender, by return. Psalm 91 doesn't ask for perfection. It invites you to dwell, to remain, to rest, to trust. Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. You've dwelled, you've rested, you've waited, and He has been faithful in every moment of it. This morning, you are not just someone being healed. You are someone being made whole through the rhythm of returning, through prayer, through scripture, through the quiet yes of your tired heart. Trust this rhythm. Trust the shepherd. Trust that you are being led toward completion. God does not leave stories unfinished. What if your lack of visible progress is actually the sign of a deeper internal healing? 2. How would your prayers change if you truly believed God was still making you whole? 3. Are you willing to honor the process as much as you long for the result? He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion. Philippians 1:6. The Lord is faithful to all His promises. Psalm 145:13. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. Prayer. Psalm 23:1. If this final prayer reminded you that God finishes what He starts, pause and give thanks. Whisper, "God, I trust you to complete the healing you began in me." Share this with someone who needs to hear that they are still becoming, still unfolding, still covered by grace. The rhythm continues, and so does the healing. Let your morning prayer always be your return to the arms of the one who never lets go.